The billionaire tossed the contract across the marble table. "Sign this in Arabic," he sneered, "if you're more than just another employee." Layla picked up the pen. What she wrote was not just translation. It was royal Diwani calligraphy, carrying flourishes taught only inside the palace of the family his father had betrayed decades ago. As every face at the table recognized the truth, the mockery died in his throat. For 3 years, that man had called Layla only by her uniform. She was 28. She spoke 5 languages. She translated million-dollar deals and vanished into service corridors. No one asked why a woman with her schooling was pouring coffee. That was the point. Her family once held a name that opened palace doors. Then a political purge took everything. The man's father had been part of the machine that stripped them bare. Now Layla sat across the table with a pen in her hand, and for the first time, he was not looking past her. He was about to learn who he had just mocked. For Layla, invisibility was not a preference. It was survival. She had learned it at 19, when soldiers came to her family's compound and removed her father's portrait from the wall. Before that night, her name was Layla bint Samia al-Zahrani. Her father had been a trusted counselor to the crown, a man whose opinion shaped trade routes and oil negotiations across the Gulf. Her mother hosted diplomats in halls lined with mother-of-pearl. Layla grew up riding horses at dawn and studying languages with private tutors, never once believing the walls around her could fall. Then a political storm broke. A coalition of powerful men accused her father of leaking state secrets to foreign investors. The evidence was fabricated. The judges were bought. The man who orchestrated it all was Yusuf al-Mansur, a rival advisor who saw Layla's father as the last obstacle between himself and control of the Emirates' reconstruction contracts. Within 72 hours, the al-Zahrani family was declared enemies of the state. Their accounts were frozen, their property seized. Her father was taken into custody and never seen outside again. Her mother died of a heart attack 6 months later in a 2-room apartment in Beirut, still waiting for justice that would never come. Layla survived because her mother had sewn her passport into the lining of her coat and pushed her onto a fishing boat before the soldiers sealed the border. For nearly a decade, she moved through cities like a ghost: Tunis, Cairo, Amman. She worked as a tutor, a hotel clerk, a translator for aid agencies. She used her mother's maiden name, Nasser. No one looked twice at a quiet woman with tired eyes who could swap between Arabic, English, French, and Farsi without raising her voice. She sent what money she could to her younger brother, who lived in hiding in Turkey. She never spoke of the palace. She never wrote her father's name. Then 3 years ago, an agency placed her at the Al Noor Royal Hotel in Dubai. The pay was good. The work was steady. And for the first time, she could almost imagine a future. She translated contracts for visiting executives, guided royal guests through cultural protocols, and stood behind the right shoulder of men who had no idea she understood every word they whispered. She recognized Zaid al-Mansur the first day he walked into the hotel. He had his father's jaw, his father's impatient stride. Zaid had inherited the family empire after Yusuf died of a stroke 6 years earlier. Billions in construction and logistics. Palaces in Abu Dhabi and London. A reputation for generosity and ruthlessness in equal measure. To the world, he was a self-made titan. To Layla, he was the son of the man who had burned her family to ash. She told herself she would never work his meetings, but the hotel assigned her to his deal team because her French was flawless and the clients were from Paris. She considered refusing. That would raise questions. So she accepted, and she stood at the edge of the conference room, interpreting clauses about equity and arbitration, while Zaid never once looked at her face. For 3 days, the negotiation moved slowly. Zaid dominated the table. He interrupted the French partners, waved off their lawyers, and made it clear that his patience was thinning. Layla delivered every sentence with perfect neutrality, and every time he called her the interpreter instead of her name, a small fire burned in her chest. But she did not break. She had spent years learning to swallow fire. Then came the final session. The French partners asked for a revised signature block in both Arabic and French. Zaid's legal team passed the contract along the table. According to protocol, Layla would translate the Arabic line for the French signatories, but before she could speak, Zaid held up a hand. "Wait," he said. He turned to her with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "You claim to be a translator. But how do I know you actually read Arabic? Any foreigner can memorize contract phrases." The room went still. Layla felt the gaze of 12 people land on her. She knew this was not about the contract. It was about power. Zaid was tired of the negotiation and needed someone to step on so he could feel tall. She said quietly, "I was born speaking Arabic, sir." He laughed. "So say the waiters and the drivers." He slid the contract across the polished marble table. The paper stopped just at her fingertips. "Sign this in Arabic. Prove you are not just another employee with a name tag and a false tongue." The French partners shifted uncomfortably. One of them said something in French, but Zaid ignored it. His eyes were locked on Layla, daring her to refuse. For a long moment, she did not move. She looked at the contract, at the empty line where a name belonged. She had signed 1,000 documents as Layla Nasser. That name had kept her alive. That name had buried her father's legacy deep enough that no one would come looking. But something broke inside her at that table. Not rage, not fear, something older. The memory of her father's hands guiding her across a page, a lesson he had given her when she was 11 years old. "Your signature is not just a marking," he had said. "In our family, the line you leave behind is a declaration of blood. The flourishes are not decoration. They are the shape of a house that once ruled and will rule again." Her father had taught her the old Diwani script, the same script that royal scribes once used for sultans, not the simplified version sold in workshops to tourists. The full ceremonial form, with its sweeping curves and interlocking stems, passed only to certain families, families who had served the crown for generations, families like hers. Layla's hand moved to the pen. Then she heard Zaid's voice again, softer now, almost bored. "Unless, of course, you prefer to fetch coffee instead." That was when she made her choice. She picked up the pen, touched the nib to the page, and began to write. And the first mark she made was not the tight, practical signature of Layla Nasser, the hotel translator. It was the unmistakable opening flourish of the Royal Al-Zahrani house. The same house Zaid's father had sworn was extinguished. The same house that was now signing in front of him. The ink was still wet when the room split in two. On one side sat the French delegation, their lawyers and investors frozen in place. On the other side stood Zaid Al-Mansur, his hand still raised in the air, the same hand that had mocked her moments earlier. But it was not the signature itself that struck first. It was the reaction of an old man at the far end of the table. His name was Philippe Dumont, a retired diplomat from the French Foreign Ministry who had spent 30 years moving through the Gulf. He had signed oil agreements with sheikhs, attended dinners inside royal compounds, and once, decades ago, signed a treaty with a man from the Al-Zahrani family. He had seen the royal flourish only once before on a document that changed the region. Now his reading glasses slid down his nose. He whispered something in French, then again louder, "That is not a signature, that is a dynastic mark." Zaid's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Philippe pointed to the page with a trembling finger. "Look at the opening stroke, the twin loops, the way the stem descends and rises into the final curve. This is the house mark of the Al-Zahrani. It appears only on documents signed by the inner family. I have seen it once. It was taught only to their bloodline." The air in the conference room became heavy. One of the younger French lawyers reached for the contract, but Layla did not let it go. She pressed the cap onto the pen with a soft click and placed it on the table. Zaid let out a short, nervous laugh. "That is absurd. The Al-Zahrani family was dissolved years ago. The name is forbidden. This woman is a hotel translator from Beirut or Cairo or wherever the agency found her. She cannot be one of them." He turned to his legal counsel, a thin man named Omar who was already typing on his phone. "Find out where she came from, check her documents." But before anyone could move, Layla spoke. Her voice was calm, the same voice that had been translating contracts for 3 years without a single flicker of emotion. "You asked me to sign in Arabic. I signed in the script of my father's house. You have no right to question it now." Zaid's jaw tightened. "Your father's house was a lie. His name was erased by decree. The Al-Zahrani are traitors." The word hung in the air like smoke. Layla did not blink. "Your father called him a traitor because he would not hand over the northern reconstruction contracts to your family. That was the whole crime. The evidence was manufactured. The judges were purchased. and your father built his fortune on the ruins of my home." A few of the French partners exchanged glances. One of them, a woman named Clea Morau, began to reach for her bag. She was not reaching for a pen. Layla noticed the subtle motion of her hand toward a phone. The room was no longer a negotiation. It was a scene. Zaid stepped back from the table. His confident posture had cracked into something defensive. "This is a fantasy. You are making a scene in front of clients. I will have security escort you out." He reached for the phone on the table, but Layla raised one hand. "I would not do that." Her voice was not loud, but it stopped him like a wall. She reached into the pocket of her suit jacket and removed a small digital recorder, the kind used to capture meeting minutes for translation accuracy. She held it up just long enough for everyone to see the red light blinking. "I have recorded every word from the moment you slid the contract to me, including the part where you said that Al-Zahrani were dissolved by decree and that your father built his fortune on my family's ruins. That is a confession, Zaid, not of me, of you." Zaid's face went pale. He looked at his legal counsel, then at the security door. For a second, he seemed to calculate whether he could have the recorder taken before the story leaked. But too many witnesses were watching. Philippe Dumont had already pushed his chair back and was staring at Layla with an expression of awe. "Who are you?" Philippe asked quietly. Layla turned to him. "My father was Samia Al-Zahrani. I am Layla bint Samia. I have been living under my mother's name for 9 years, and today, this man asked me to prove I could read my own language. So I did." The silence lasted less than 3 seconds before the room erupted. Clea Morau stood and asked Layla if she would be willing to speak to her colleagues in Paris. The young French lawyer whispered to Philippe, who was already shaking his head in disbelief. Zaid barked at his team to leave, but none of them moved. Senior advisor from his own Emirati office placed a hand on Zaid's arm, but Zaid shook him off. "Everyone out," Zaid shouted. "This meeting is over." But no one listened. The door had not opened because the hotel's floor manager, a woman named Rainier, had been alerted by a housekeeper who overheard the shouting. She entered the room just as Zaid pointed at Layla. "Call security," he ordered. "This woman has stolen documents and fabricated a story. Arrest her." Rainier did not move. She had worked at the Al Noor Royal Hotel for 15 years. She had seen powerful men throw tantrums, but she had also seen the quiet dignity of staff who did their jobs. She looked from Layla to Zaid, then to the contract still on the table. "Mr. Al-Mansur," she said, "the signature is on the document. If it is fabricated, that is easily verified. But I do not think security is needed. I think we need to understand what happened here." Zaid's face twisted. He snatched the contract from the table and held it up, as if crumpling it would erase what was written. But Philippe reached out and grabbed his wrist. "Do not destroy that," Philippe said. "That is evidence. And if you are wise, you will not make another mistake today." The room was spiraling. Layla watched as years of careful invisibility finally collapsed around her. She had not planned this. She had not wanted this. But the moment Zaid mocked her, something ancient had risen from her hands. The signature had not been a choice. It had been a reflex of blood. Then came the first camera flash. Somewhere behind the glass partition of the conference room, a young hotel intern named Hamza had been passing with a tray of dates and coffee. He had stopped when he heard the shouting. When he saw the old man bow toward Layla, he pulled out his phone. The camera shutter clicked once, then again. Zaid lunged toward the window. "Delete that, delete it now," but it was too late. Hamza had already stepped back, his eyes wide with panic. He looked at Layla, then at the recording device in her hand, then at the contract in Zaid's fist. He did not know the full story, but he understood one thing. A billionaire was trying to silence a hotel worker, and the world would want to know why. He turned and ran down the corridor. Zaid went after him, but 2 of the French partners blocked the door. Philippe held up his hands. "You are not leaving until we understand the truth. If this woman is who she says she is, then your entire company's history is built on a crime, and our board will not sign anything with you." The negotiation was now dead. In its place stood something far more dangerous. Layla looked down at the table. Her hand was steady, but her pulse was racing. She had spent 9 years running from the name that now echoed in the room. She had buried her father's memory so deep that she sometimes forgot the sound of his voice. But in the last 5 minutes, she had spoken it aloud, and now the walls were closing in from every side. Zaid pushed Philippe's hand away and turned back to Layla. His voice had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something colder. You think this will end well for you? My father destroyed yours. I will do the same. You are a hotel employee with a recorder and a story. I have banks, lawyers, and half the ministries in this city. By tomorrow, you will be gone. By next week, no one will remember your name. Layla met his eyes. You are wrong about one thing. What is that? She picked up the pen again and placed it in her pocket. Then she reached into her other pocket and removed a small flash drive. It was silver, unmarked, and worn at the edges from years of being carried across borders. This is not just a story, it is proof. Original documents from the purge. Letters from your father to the minister who signed the seizure order. Ledger entries showing how my family's assets were transferred to shell companies owned by him. I have carried this for 9 years, waiting for the right moment. I thought that moment would be in a courtroom, but I was wrong. It is here. Zaid's face went white as bone. The room had become very quiet. Philippe stared at the flash drive as if it were a bomb. Claire Moreau took a step forward. Rainier, the floor manager, closed the door and stood in front of it. Layla lifted the flash drive into the light. You asked me to sign a contract. Instead, I have just signed your undoing. And this recording, combined with these documents, will be inside every newsroom in Dubai within the hour unless you answer one question. Where is my father? The question landed like a stone in still water. Zaid did not answer. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, because the truth was something even he did not know. His father had taken that secret to the grave, but Layla did not need his answer. She only needed the silence, because the silence was confirmation enough, and the silence was now on tape. From the corridor, a new sound rose, footsteps, voices, the hotel's security team, summoned not by Zaid but by the interns, panicked messages to his co-workers. They were not coming to arrest Layla. They were coming to see if the story was true. And at the far end of the hall, someone had already opened a live stream. Layla looked toward the door. She knew that in moments, the first headline would break. A hidden royal, a billionaire's confession, a signature that had once opened palaces now opening a far more dangerous door. But there was one thing no one in that room knew yet. The flash drive in her hand was empty. The real documents were hidden in a safe deposit box in Istanbul, under a name even her brother did not know. She had bluffed with a shell, but the recording was real, and the signature was real. And she had just bought herself the only thing that mattered, time. The handle of the conference room door began to turn, and the first reporter's voice could be heard from the corridor, asking a question that would echo across the gulf before sunset. Is it true? Is the last daughter of the Al-Zahrani alive? The reporter did not wait for an answer. She pushed through the door with a camera operator behind her, the lens already rolling. Her name was Dana Haddad, a correspondent for one of the few independent Gulf news networks still allowed to operate under careful restrictions. She had been in the hotel lobby covering a different story altogether, a meaningless trade summit, when the intern's live stream began spreading on social media. Within 3 minutes, Dana had recognized the name Al-Zahrani and sprinted down the corridor. Is it true? Is the last daughter of the Al-Zahrani alive? The question struck Layla in the chest. For 9 years, she had imagined this moment. She had rehearsed what she might say, how she might stand, how she would finally speak her father's name without flinching. But now that the moment was here, she did not feel triumph. She felt naked. Zaid stepped in front of the camera, his hand raised. No comment. This is a private meeting. Turn that off. Dana did not lower the camera. Instead, she pointed it at the contract still on the table, then at Philippe Dumont, whose face was ashen. Sir, you are a former diplomat. You know the Al-Zahrani mark. Can you confirm what you saw? Philippe swallowed hard. He looked at Layla, then at Zaid, then back at the lens. I have seen that mark only once before. It is not something that can be forged casually, but I am not an expert. You will need a certified calligrapher and a historian. Dana turned to Layla. Your name. Your father's name? Layla hesitated. This was the line she had never crossed. But the pen in her pocket was still warm from her hand, and the signature on the contract was already bleeding into public consciousness. She could not go back. She would not go back. My name is Layla bint Samia Al-Zahrani. My father was Samia Al-Zahrani, former counselor to the crown. He was taken from our home when I was 19 years old. He was never seen again. And the man standing beside me is Zaid Al-Mansur, son of the man who ordered it. The camera angle widened, Zaid's face contorted. He reached for Dana's arm, but the operator stepped between them. "Do not touch the journalist," a voice said from the doorway. It was Rainier, the floor manager, holding a phone to her ear. "I have security coming. The hotel has cameras in this corridor. Everyone is being recorded." Zaid turned on Rainier. "You work for this hotel. You will lose your job before sunset." Rainier did not flinch. "I work for the truth, and so does the rest of the staff. Half of them are already watching the live stream in the break room." The words landed like a verdict. In that instant, Layla understood that she was no longer alone. The invisible army of service workers, housekeepers, drivers, and clerks had seen themselves in her, a woman with a name tag who refused to be erased, and now they were bearing witness with their phones. Zaid's legal counsel, Omar, grabbed him by the arm and whispered urgently. Zaid shook him off, but the panic in his eyes had deepened into something like fear. He pulled out his own phone and made a call, speaking in rapid Arabic. Layla caught only a few words: damage control, the ministry, silence her. She knew what that meant. In the old days, silence had been a gun in a dark garage. In the modern era, silence was a smear campaign, a cancelled visa, a frozen bank account, a threat delivered to a family member's door. She looked at the camera and knew the only protection she had was visibility. Dana stepped closer. "Is there proof, documents, anything beyond the signature?" Layla lifted the silver flash drive again. "This contains original letters and ledger entries from the purge. It shows how my family's assets were transferred to Al-Mansur shell companies 1 week after my father's arrest. I have carried it for 9 years, waiting for the right moment. I will release it to a trusted newsroom, not here, not in front of a man who wants to destroy it." Zaid lunged forward. For a horrifying second, Layla thought he would try to grab the drive. But the camera operator blocked him, and 2 hotel security guards entered the room, drawn by the commotion. They were young men in black suits, confused and uneasy. One of them recognized Layla from the staff cafeteria. He stepped between her and Zaid. "Sir, please step back." Zaid pointed at Layla. "She is a former employee with delusions. She has no proof. That drive is empty or fabricated. Arrest her for theft of confidential meeting materials." The guard did not move. He looked at Layla, then at the contract, then at Philippe. "I do not have authority to arrest anyone. I can only ask everyone to remain calm until the police arrive." Dana's eyes widened. "The police? Who called the police?" It was Zaid's legal counsel who answered, his voice small. "I did, as required by protocol for a security incident involving a client." Layla felt the floor tilt. For 9 years, she had avoided police. She had crossed borders with forged documents, worked under a false name, and lived in constant fear of being flagged in a database. If the police took her in, the first thing they would do was run her identity. The second thing they would do was discover her visa violations. The third thing they would do was call the very ministries Zaid controlled. She could not let that happen. She turned to Dana. "You want proof? I will give you a copy, but not here. Meet me at the public fountain in Zabil Park at 6 o'clock tonight. Bring your camera, bring a live feed. I will show the world everything." Dana nodded, her face alight with the hunger of a career-defining story. "I will be there." Layla turned and walked toward the door. Zaid shouted something after her, but the security guards held him back. Philippe called out, "Wait. If you are truly Samia's daughter, there is something you must know. I do not say this lightly." Layla paused at the threshold. She did not turn around. "Then tell me," Philippe lowered his voice. "Your father was not executed. I saw him 2 years after the purge at a private hospital in Riyadh. A friend of mine worked there as a physician. He told me a man matching Samia's description was being held under a different name. He had been moved several times. He was alive, but he was not well. I never had proof, and I was afraid to speak. But now, standing here, I know I must say it." The room went very quiet. Layla's heart slammed against her ribs. Alive. The word was a door opening into a dark room she had sealed shut. She turned slowly. "You are telling me my father could still be alive?" Philippe nodded, his eyes glistening. "I am telling you that the man who destroyed your family did not kill your father. He kept him as leverage. And if Zaid is his father's son, he may know exactly where Samia al-Zahrani is today." Layla looked at Zaid. The color had drained from his face. The The smirk was gone. The arrogance had crumbled into something raw. He shook his head. I do not know what you are talking about. My father never spoke of such things. But Layla had spent 3 years reading the room. She had learned to hear the hitch in a voice, the flicker of an eye, the way a man touched his collar when he was lying. Zaid's hand was at his throat. He might not know the full truth, but he knew something, and she would find out what. Dana's camera was still rolling. Layla looked directly into the lens. Then I will ask the world, where is Samia al-Zahrani? And if he is alive, I will not stop until he is free. She walked out. The corridor was packed with hotel staff, some recording, some crying, some simply staring. At the end of the hall, the intern Hamza stood with his phone still raised. He lowered it as she passed. I am sorry, he said. I did not mean to cause trouble. Layla stopped. She looked at the young man, not much older than her brother. You did not cause trouble. You opened a door, do not close it. She kept walking. By the time she reached the staff exit, her phone was vibrating with messages from unknown numbers. Some were threats, some were pleas for interviews. One was from her brother in Turkey. It said only, they came to the apartment, I am safe, do not go home. Layla stood in the loading bay, the heat of the afternoon sun pressing down. She had not planned any of this, but it was too late to stop. The storm had already begun. And in 6 hours, she would face the world at a public fountain with an empty flash drive and a heart full of questions. She needed the real documents from Istanbul. She needed a lawyer. She needed a miracle. But before she could take another step, a car pulled up. The window rolled down. It was Claire Moreau, the French investor from the meeting. She was alone. Get in, she said. I know someone who can help you. And if you trust no one else, trust this. Your father is not the only one who has been held in secret by powerful men. I have seen it before. Layla stared at her. The woman's eyes held no kindness, but they held something rarer, understanding. She climbed into the car. And as the door closed, a new alert lit up her phone. A video from inside the conference room, already posted and spreading. The caption read, Royal daughter surfaces in Dubai hotel, claims billionaire's father stole her family and hid her father for years. In less than an hour, it had been viewed 2 million times. But the thing that would break the story open had not yet happened, because Claire Moreau was not just a French investor. She was a former intelligence officer, and she knew exactly which hospital Philippe Dumont was talking about. She also knew that Zaid's father had left behind a vault of secrets. And one of those secrets was about to be handed to Layla. But at the same moment, in a secure room in the Al Mansa building, a team was already scrubbing digital records. Zaid had gotten off the phone with his ministry contact. The order was simple. Before sundown, Layla bint Samia al-Zahrani had to disappear, and if they could not erase her story, they would erase her. The car moved into traffic. Zabil Park was 6 hours away. The countdown had begun. Claire Moreau did not drive toward Zabil Park. She turned the car south, toward the industrial district of Al-Quoz, where old warehouses leaned against the highway like forgotten bones. Layla watched the city blur past, the towers of Dubai Marina giving way to sand-streaked lots and tired machineries. She did not ask where they were going. She had learned long ago that questions could be more dangerous than silence. After 15 minutes, Claire pulled into a narrow alley behind a printing shop. She killed the engine and turned to Layla. You are wondering if you can trust me. Layla did not answer. I worked for the French Directorate General for External Security for 11 years. I left after a mission in North Africa went wrong. Now I construct financial deals that hide other people's secrets, but I also keep my own. And I know Yusuf Al-Mansur's network because I once investigated it for a client who never lived to see the evidence. She reached into the glove box and removed a small black case. Inside was a satellite phone, a set of prepaid SIM cards, and a laminated card with an Istanbul address. Your brother messaged you that they came to his apartment. He sent me his location. I have someone moving him now, but you have a bigger problem. Zaid will not wait for the park. His people will be at every exit, every road, every checkpoint. They know your face now. Layla stared at the woman. How do I reach the park? Claire did not smile. We make sure the world reaches you first. We broadcast the proof before you ever stand in front of a camera. You said the real documents are in a safe deposit box in Istanbul. That is 7 hours away by plane. But I have a man at the bank. He can retrieve them and send images to a dead drop within 40 minutes. The original physical documents will take longer, but the digital copies will be enough to break the story. Layla shook her head. I cannot give up the location to a stranger. You are not. You are giving it to me, and I am giving you something in return. Claire reached into her bag and removed a manila envelope. She handed it to Layla. Inside were medical records, old and foxed. The name on the first page was crossed out, but beneath it, in fine pencil, someone had written, Al-Zahrani, S. Residence Protocol. Layla's breath caught. Where did you get this? Philippe was not the only one who suspected your father was alive. My former partner in Riyadh spent 2 years tracking a patient transferred between private hospitals under different names. He died before he could publish, but I kept his notes. The last known location was a closed wing of the Dar al-Shifa clinic in Riyadh, funded by a shell company linked to the Al-Mansa group. Layla's hands trembled. The paper was old, but the trail was real. Her father might be in that building. She had to know. She looked up. If I give you the location, you must promise me one thing. Do not let the documents fall into the hands of someone who will bury them. Claire's eyes were steady. I am a former spy, not a saint, but I know what it means to carry a name that is not allowed to exist. I will help you. Layla wrote the details of the Istanbul safe deposit box on a scrap of paper. Claire made a call on the satellite phone, speaking in rapid Turkish. Then she hung up and started the car. Now we wait, but not here. There is a place where we can watch the news and prepare. She drove to a small apartment in Jumeirah, owned by an old contact who asked no questions. Inside, the windows were covered, and 2 laptops sat on a table. Claire opened a secure browser and began monitoring local networks. The footage from the hotel was already dominating the news. The video of Layla signing the contract had been shared across the Gulf, and the phrase Al-Zahrani daughter was trending in 3 languages. But Layla could not sit still. She stood by the window, looking out at the city that had been her cage for 3 years. Somewhere beyond those towers, her father might still be breathing. She thought of her grandmother's house, the smell of jasmine in the courtyard, the sound of her father's voice reciting old poems. She had spent 9 years running from that memory. Now she was running toward it. Claire's phone buzzed. She read the screen and her face changed. Zaid has just held a press conference. He is claiming you are an imposter who forged the signature and that the flash drive is a fake. He says the Al-Zahrani family has no living members and that you will be arrested for fraud. Layla felt a cold wave pass through her. He is trying to preempt me. Yes, but he made one mistake. He used the present tense. He said the family has no living members. That is not a denial that your father was held. It is a claim that he is dead, but he did not produce a body, and the public is starting to ask that exact question. Claire turned the laptop around. On the screen, a news anchor was interviewing Philippe Dumont live. The old diplomat was visibly shaken but firm. I cannot say with certainty that the woman I saw is Samia's daughter, but the mark she made was authentic to my knowledge. And I have reason to believe Samia Al-Zahrani did not die immediately after his arrest. He may have been held in secret for years. The anchor pressed. Who would have held him? Philippe paused, then looked directly into the camera. The man who benefited most from his removal, Yusuf Al-Mansa, and after his death, his son, Zaid, inherited not just the fortune, but the secrets. The broadcast cut to a live shot of Zaid's press conference. The billionaire was walking off stage, refusing questions, his face slick with sweat. Behind him, 2 official-looking men in white thobes watched silently. Layla recognized one of them from the old days, a court official named Sheikh Rashid Al Nahyan, a man she had once seen at her father's table. He was not smiling. Claire pointed at the frozen image. That man could be the key. He was your father's ally. He may have been waiting for proof. If he sees the documents, he could force the state to open an investigation. At that moment, Claire's phone rang again. She answered, listened, and then closed her eyes. They are at the Istanbul bank. The box is real. The documents are inside, but someone else got there first. A man in a black suit speaking Arabic was seen leaving 10 minutes before our contact arrived. He used an old authorization code. It was from years ago, but still valid. Your father's code. The room went silent. Layla felt the floor shift beneath her. Her father's code. The safe deposit box had been opened using a code only he would know, but her father was missing, unless he was not missing anymore, unless someone had kept his code for exactly this moment, or unless her father had escaped. The phone buzzed again. Claire read the screen and her face went white. He left a note behind. Our contact found it inside the box. It says, bring the proof to the place where the water remembers the old name. Do not come alone, he is waiting. Layla grabbed the phone. The message was brief, written in a script she had not seen since childhood. It was her father's handwriting, the same royal Diwani flourish, the same loops, the same unmistakable style. He was alive, and he had just sent her a message from the grave. But where was the place where the water remembers the old name? She thought back to her childhood. There was only one place in Dubai that matched, a public fountain in the old quarter built on the site of an ancient spring where caravans once stopped. Her father used to take her there when she was small before the towers rose. He called it the place where the water remembers the old name. The meeting at Zabil Park was a decay. The real meeting was at the old fountain. Layla turned to Claire. We need to go now, but not to the park, to the old city near the creek. I know where he is waiting. Claire did not hesitate. She grabbed the car keys. We have 40 minutes before Zaid's people connect the same dots. They are already listening to the news. If the old code was used, they know something moved. They will be searching for him too. They drove fast through the city, crossing the creek toward Deira, weaving through narrow streets and market stalls. The sun was beginning to sink, casting long shadows across the pavement. The old fountain sat in a quiet courtyard beside a mosque, surrounded by date palms and low stone benches. It was nearly empty at this hour. Layla stepped out of the car, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her throat. She walked toward the fountain, scanning the shadows. For a moment, nothing moved. Then an old man rose from a bench near the water. He was thin, stooped, with a white beard and dark glasses. He leaned on a wooden cane. Layla stopped 10 feet away, afraid to breathe. He removed the glasses. His eyes were her father's eyes. She fell to her knees. Baba. The old man reached out, and his voice was a whisper, cracked from years of silence. You came, my daughter, you came. They held each other for a long time, the water flowing behind them like a memory. Samia al-Zahrani was alive. He had been held in a secure wing of the clinic for years, then moved to a private house in the desert when the public began to forget. He had escaped 3 weeks ago with the help of a nurse who recognized his face from an old photograph. He had been hiding in the city, waiting for the right moment. The video of Layla's signature had been the signal he needed, but they had little time. Zaid's men were already in the district. Claire stood guard at the edge of the courtyard, watching the street. Samia looked into his daughter's eyes. I have the original documents. I removed them from the box before his man arrived. I left the note so you would know I was alive. I have them here. He tapped a worn leather bag at his side. But if we go to the police, they will arrest me again. The old order still protects the Al-Mansur name. Layla shook her head. Not anymore. The world is watching, and we have something more powerful than documents now. We have a live broadcast. She looked at Claire. Can you get Dana Haddad to the old fountain instead of Zabil Park? Claire nodded and made a call. Within minutes, a car pulled up and Dana stepped out, camera rolling. She was breathless, but when she saw the old man, her eyes went wide. Samia al-Zahrani, the counselor, you are alive. Samia stepped forward, his cane tapping on the stone. I am alive, and for 9 years I have been held by the Al-Mansur family, accused of treason I never committed. Today I will show the world the proof. Dana's camera operator crouched, framing the shot. The live stream was already running. Layla stood beside her father, the fountain behind them, the last light of day catching the water like scattered gold. Samia opened the leather bag and removed a stack of documents, ledgers, signed orders, photographs. He held them up one by one, explaining in a voice that grew stronger with each word. The first document was the original royal decree stripping the al-Zahrani family of its status. It was signed by a minister who had been paid by Yusuf al-Mansur. Second showed the transfer of the family's assets to 3 shell companies, all controlled by the al-Mansur group. The third was a letter from Yusuf to a hospital administrator, ordering the indefinite detention of a high-value prisoner. The fourth was a medical record showing that Samia had been sedated and moved 11 times. When he finished, he looked directly at the camera, his eyes blazing. The man who did this was not me. I served the crown. I refused to steal, and so I was erased. My daughter did not forget. She carried my name in her hand, and today the water remembers. Today I remember, and I demand justice. The broadcast was seen by millions. It broke the back of the old silence. Within an hour, the royal court issued a statement. Sheikh Rashid Al Nahyan announced a formal commission to investigate the case. Zaid Al Mansur was taken into custody for questioning, not by the local police he had paid, but by a federal task force assembled from Abu Dhabi. His accounts were frozen. His offices were sealed. Layla and her father were taken to a safe location, protected by the same soldiers who had once come to take him away. But now they stood guard, not to strike, but to shield. 2 weeks later, the commission confirmed the documents were authentic. The Al-Zahrani family was posthumously restored, its name cleared, its remaining assets returned. Layla was recognized as the legitimate daughter of Samia Al-Zahrani, and her father was given a full pardon and medical care. He had spent 9 years in darkness, but he would not spend another day as a prisoner. Zaid Al-Mansur faced charges of fraud, unlawful imprisonment, and conspiracy. His empire crumbled. His father's grave became a monument to shame, and the son who had mocked a translator for not reading Arabic. He was last seen in a courtroom, the smirk gone, the handcuffs bright around his wrists. But the final surprise was not about him. After the trial, Layla and her father walked through the old quarter, past the fountain where the water remembered the old name. They stopped at a small tea shop, and Samia ordered mint tea with honey. As they sat, he reached into his pocket and removed a folded paper. It was old, yellowed, and covered in his own handwriting. "I wrote this the night they came for me. I knew I would not be able to hide everything, so I wrote a letter to you in the old script and sealed it inside the lining of a book you loved. I hoped one day you would find it, but I also knew they would search our home. So I taught you only one thing they could not take, the flourish, the line, the mark that could not be forged. I taught you to sign as only we can, and I told you not to use it until the time was right." Layla stared at the paper. "I found it. I use it every day. But I did not understand why the flourish was so important." Samia smiled, a slow, sad smile. "It is not a signature. It is a pledge carved into the line. It says, 'I am here and I have not forgotten.'" He took the paper, dipped a small brush into a glass of water, and painted a single line on the table. The water caught the light and glistened, then faded. But the line remained in Layla's mind long after it dried. That line was not just proof of heritage. It was the shape of survival itself. And now, in the heart of a city that had tried to erase her, Layla understood. The pen had not revealed her royal blood. The pen had revealed her father's final lesson: dignity is not given, it is written, and she would keep writing it for the rest of her life. The story of Layla and Samia Al-Zahrani is not only about a signature or a fallen dynasty. It is about what happens when the powerful assume that silence is the same as absence. For 9 years, one man was erased from public record, while the world looked at the skyline and saw only progress. For 9 years, one woman carried a name inside her hand like a blade, waiting for the exact moment it could cut through the lie. There are rooms like the one at the Al Noor Royal Hotel everywhere. Boardrooms where translators stand invisible. Service corridors where staff are told to be forgettable. The billionaire who mocked a woman for not reading her own language did not know he was standing across from the last proof of his family's crime. He had built an empire on the erasure of others, and his mistake was not malice. It was certainty. He was certain she was no one, but the water remembers the old name. The palm trees remember the old courtyard, and the hand, once raised to humiliate, became the moment the truth could no longer be hidden. Layla's flourish was not magic. It was memory, trained into muscle, passed from father to daughter at a table in a house that no longer exists. That is the deepest truth of this case. Erased people are never fully gone. They leave marks. They keep documents. They teach their children how to sign in a script the enemy cannot forge. And when the moment comes, those marks become evidence. The question that remains is not whether justice was done. It was, at least partly. Zaid Al-Mansur will answer for what his father built. The Al-Zahrani name has been returned to its place, and Samia can live his final years in freedom. But the question that should linger is this: how many other names are still hidden in ledgers we will never see? How many people are working in plain sight, carrying proof of a wider crime, waiting for the day when someone finally asks them to write their real name? Layla got her answer. Her father got his freedom. The signature got its meaning back. But for every story like this that breaks, There are hundreds that do not. The only reason this one did is that a young hotel intern decided to record what he saw, a retired diplomat found the courage to speak, and a woman refused to stay invisible when the moment demanded otherwise. If you watched this and felt something shift, ask yourself what you would have done in that conference room. Would you have kept serving coffee, or would you have picked up the pen? Because decency is not a grand gesture. It is a small decision in a quiet room made by someone who knows the cost. Thank you for watching. If this story stayed with you, like and subscribe so it reaches someone who needs to see it. Tell us in the comments, what would you have written on that contract? And remember, the next time you see a waiter, a translator, a clerk, look again. They may be carrying more than your order. They may be carrying a name.